This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and another year, another fold. This is the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5. Can you believe it? 5 years. It already still seems like what? A novel thing, a folding phone, but we're up to the 5th generation of this, and Samsung continues to improve it. We're going to look at it now. Okay, cue in the YouTube and reviewer predictables. We're going to talk about two things, and you're going to predict what those are, but hopefully I'll have some other things to say that are interesting beyond the fact that obviously not a lot has changed this generation with the Z Fold 5, but yet there are compelling reasons why you might be interested in buying one. Let me get straight to point number one. If you have a Z Fold 4, unless you got money to burn in your pocket and you're a real enthusiast for these phones, if you got a Z Fold 4, probably hold off on upgrading. Samsung has pre-order deals. The phone actually ships, at least in the United States, August 11th, where you can trade in and get like $800 back or something like that if you trade in. It is still a lot of money out of pocket, isn't it? But if you're coming from a Z Fold 3, like personally I have a Z Fold 3, not the 4, or an older one, then the improvements are going to be there. And this is, you know, this goes just about for every phone that we reviewed. These days it's not about year-to-year jumps and leaps in performance and changes, and they're more evolutionary changes, but it stacks up a couple of years down the road. Now, obviously, the other thing is the aspect ratio. Here in the United States, we are folding phone starved. You know, in Europe and China, you have choices, different brands. Here, we pretty much only had Samsung, and now we have the Moto Razr becoming a more viable candidate versus the Flip 5 that we'll be reviewing. And we have the Pixel Fold, which I've already reviewed. In fact, we have a smackdown between these two phones. So we have a little bit of competition. So you can choose your preferred aspect ratio as one thing. Samsung has not changed that at all. So this is still, when closed, a very tall, narrow phone. Oddball aspect ratio for the cover display, like 23:9 aspect ratio. So that makes for not the most comfortable typing. Some people say they're okay because they use swipe and that sort of thing. Now, there are a few people who love the tall, skinny thing because it's easy to hold with one hand. Wrap your fingers around it, you know, that sort of thing, narrow pockets, whatever it is. But if you want the wider screen thing, well, Google with their Pixel Fold has given you some competition. That said, and even though I personally do like that Pixel Fold aspect ratio, because for me, primarily these devices are still phones first, and I want them to be able to turn into tablets. There are people who primarily keep the phone open most of the time. They want a tablet, but when they want to put it away and stick it in their pocket, well, they can put it away and stick it in their pocket, which is not something you're going to do with a Samsung Galaxy Tab or an iPad, is it, right? So for those of you who want tablet-first ergonomics, that's what you have here. When you open it up, it's still, as ever, in portrait orientation now. The inner display at 7.6 inches is unchanged. The resolution is the same. But in the aspect ratio is almost square, right? But it's still vaguely portrait orientation, and that still does work better with Android applications, very few of which are really well optimized for oddball screen sizes or for tablets even. So with the Pixel Fold, you got to rotate. With this one, you don't if you want to avoid pillar boxing. So that's nice. Like I said, that inner display, it's lovely, and you know, I like the displays on the Samsung better than the Pixel Fold, even for their brightness and the vivid color option that they have. The inner and outer displays are the same in terms of resolution and size and all that sort of thing as they were last generation, but they do get even brighter. Both of them can do 1750 nits of peak brightness on auto brightness. You can't make it get that bright, but if you put it on auto brightness and you go in a bright place, boy, will they get bright. Makes it easier to see outside. Particularly that's useful for the inner display because we still have that flexible plastic screen protector over the top of the flexible display, and it picks up a lot of fingerprints, and it also glares more than just straight glass would. So anything that's bright and overcomes that helps. So that's nice. It's, I would say, a noticeable improvement, certainly. Yes, it is still flexible glass inside. That's what makes it a folding phone, right? And in terms of durability, Samsung says it should do a bit better. The biggest complaints that users have had so far have been the screen protector peeling, which isn't that hard to get replaced. That one's not a big deal, or actual cracking. So now that we have a folding flat hinge, yay, no more little wedgy gap that we used to have. So it feels a little narrower in the hand, a little better. It is a little bit thinner. And also it allows for a more teardrop-like design where the display can bulge outward like that when it's closed and not be squeezed so tight, so maybe that'll help with durability. Samsung's also offering discounted screen protector replacements and screen replacements totally for the inner display if something goes wrong that isn't covered by warranty, and Samsung's known to give you a hard time when it comes to warranty repairs, but that's another story altogether. Anyway, I think it's like $200 to get the complete inner display replaced, which is a lot cheaper than it would be otherwise, and the screen protector is significantly cheaper, under $50, I think. So besides the brighter screen, the new hinge, the other big thing is obviously the generational new CPU that we have. We have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 replacing the Gen 1. Okay, so it's a little bit faster, it's a little bit more power efficient. They also have a 38% larger vapor chamber to keep it cool. For those of you into gaming laptops, you know about vapor chambers, little things over the CPU that really help keep it chill, which means more performance. The thinner the phone, the more it's likely to throttle and all that sort of thing. When you have something as packed with components as this, well, when it comes to battery life, still a same capacity battery, 4,400 milliamp, and if you're coming from a Fold 3, it's going to be noticeably better, which, as I said, I'm doing as one of my daily drivers was a Fold 3. From the Fold 4, a little bit better, not as much of a jump. But yeah, if you've got one of those older Folds, discount even the fact that your battery has been through a lot of charging cycles, it's better. One caveat, and I think this explains why some folks say, wow, my battery life has been awesome, and other people are like, in the toilet, what are you talking about? It's that 1750 nits of max peak brightness right there. So when I use the phone daily indoors in diffuse ambient lighting, my battery life has been just great. I've been delighted with it. It's not as good as a Galaxy S23 Ultra, which is just like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, two of the longest running phones for run times that you can find, but it's been really good. But when we put it under the studio lights, for example, to shoot all the beauty shots that you've been seeing, those lights are pretty bright, and it runs at max brightness, and oh my God, you could just see the battery going, woo. So take that with a grain of salt. If you're going to be using it outside all the time, or you work in a wildly bright environment, probably not many of us do, your battery life won't be as good as it would be if you're working in diffuse indoor ambient lighting. When it comes to charging, we have the same 25-watt wired charging and 15-watt Qi wireless charging. No charger in the box. Why should you spend $1,800 on the phone and get a charger? Silly me to even think that might be a thing, right? It's supposed to be to avoid things going to landfill. I know. But anyway, it also supports reverse wireless charging, so you can charge your Galaxy Watch or your Buds on the back of it, as always. I haven't noticed any heat problems or any slowdowns with Qi wireless charging on this, so that seems to work just fine. Nor do I notice any heat issues in general. When I first was setting it up, it got toasty warm, but that just is true of just about every phone, so it's been fine since then. Other special sauce things unique to Samsung are the S Pen. If you're an S Pen person, well, it's going to be this phone for you, right? And they came out with a new slimmer, smaller S Pen, aka the toothpick S Pen for the Fold this year. So for those of you who just found the other one a little bit too bulky, or the case that went with it too bulky, now they have a slimmer one, which is backward compatible with the Fold 4 and the Fold 3, so it'll work. No new technology inside, but they do have a new case also to go with it, so it's a little bit less bulky because there's no room for a silo inside this phone. They'd have to make the phone even bigger to fit a silo in, like the S23 Ultra has a silo to stick the pen in. So you're still toting it separately, but they do have a case option that's a little bit more compact than the previous gen. Could such a thing be designed for the Fold 4? Probably. Will Samsung do it? Not likely. They want you to buy a new Fold 5. The other thing Samsung's great at is the multitasking thing. So you've got, obviously, for holding in portrait mode, two very narrow but tall windows. You could rotate it to landscape mode if you wanted, but you don't just do side by side. They have app pairing, which is something Google Pixel Fold doesn't have right there. You can even throw in a third app in the mix and have floating windows. So for those of you who are multitasking mavens or using this as a laptop replacement on the road, still well done. Very mature software from Samsung when it comes to foldables after, again, 5 generations, I would hope so. But the software tweaks that they do and things to the flex mode stuff that they've got going on, as ever, well done. When it comes to the cameras, you've got the same hardware as last year. Usually you see a generational jump there, but no. Samsung says the improvement really comes with the new SoC, system on chip, CPU, geeky words for such a thing, to allow them to do a little bit more software-based improvements and firmware-based improvements with the photography. I don't see much of a difference from the Fold 4, honestly. Again, the same hardware specs here, maybe a little bit smarter processing occasionally. It still looks like Samsung, you know, which means very saturated colors and pretty strong contrast. For example, if you like naturalistic looking photos, you'll probably lean more towards a Pixel. When it holds its own, honestly, against most camera phones on the market today, it is not going to make you happy if you're a real photo maven and you're really relying on your phone as your primary camera, and you're really one of those people who wants a Pixel, for example, or the best that Apple has to offer with the iPhone, the top tiers in the United States of camera phone photography. But for most people, sharp, colorful pictures. You got your ultra wide, you have your main high resolution camera, and you have a 3x optical telephoto. I wish that went out to 5x, especially because you're starting from such a wide base point with phones that even 3x kind of only brings you into, in digital camera world, something like a normal range of photography, you know what I mean? So you're going to be using some digital zooming. You can get away with that up to about 6x before things start to degrade. After 10x, yeah, forget about it. If you're really into telephoto photography, again, S23 Ultra is the one for you. We still have a 4 megapixel under display selfie camera for the inner one, and it's still an under display camera, which means you look a little hazy milky. And then the outer one is 10 megapixel, and it's just fine as well. And you can use those for face unlock. You also have a fingerprint scanner embedded in the power button, which works reliably enough. It's fine. So that's the Galaxy Z Fold 5. Here we are, 5 generations in, and finally it closes flat. We have a slimmer design by a bit, super bright inner displays, very competent cameras, even if not much change there, and the special sauce of the S Pen and also Samsung DeX. For those of you who use DeX, I know you can't live without it. That's something that this allows you. You plug it into a monitor and you've got this desktop-like experience, so it's a lot more useful for those of you who do need to use this as your only computer in a pinch. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.